In her left hand was a sharp ice pick and in her right, a rhino whip, and she had to choose between stabbing a man in the thigh with the ice pick or whipping the man with the whip 3 times. After weighing the options, Dina chose to pick up the whip, but she couldn't do it fast enough, so she gave the man a mock whipping, only to have the tycoon discover that the announcement had been invalidated. Dina made a ruthless attempt to kill him, and with each stroke, the man muffled the sound of his voice. After 3 strokes, his back was covered in blood, and then it was Matt's turn to choose, but strangely enough, it was still the man in the suit. Matt's conscience broke down, and he couldn't stab a woman, much less a wounded man, but if he didn't do it, he'd die, and he had to choose once more to strike the man in the suit 6 times, and with his back a blur of blood and flesh, it was the man's turn to choose whether he should stab the man in the thighs, or have the butler give him 3 blows. The rich man's son smiled as he knew that he was being punished by the rich man's son, but the man refused to do so, and stared at the rich man's son, determined to fight the rich man to the end, and then clenched his teeth and waited to be hit. The butler did not hesitate to hit the man, but he did it again, and again, and again. Knowing that the man in the suit could not hold on any longer, he could only take the ice pick and stab the old lady in the thigh, but he hit a major artery, and the blood flowed like a cone. Fatty took off his belt and bandaged her up, and ran away, but the old lady was paralyzed and had no pain, and it was the turn of the woman who was the night devil of the farm to choose. She gave a few more moments of story, then got up and took the ice pick and headed towards Dina, and, without regard to Dina's pleas, stabbed her in the waist, and then stabbed her in the waist, and then stabbed her in the waist, and then stabbed Dina, and then stabbed Dina. The men realize that this is not a game of mutual help, but a game of life and death, and it is not long before the old woman receives her dinner. The housekeeper pushes the old lady away with a grimace, and the man in the suit falls into a stupor and collapses to the ground. Finally, it is Blackie's turn to choose, and, perhaps under the influence of the women, he is so compelled that he picks up his whip and walks over to the man who has collapsed to the ground, and after 3 lashes, the man has lost his breath for all time. Knowing that they could not sit idly by, they quietly discussed their plans for escape, advising the rich man and the housekeeper not to pay any attention to him, and Matt immediately called the police from the table. A couple of men put down the bodyguards, and with the concerted efforts of all, the rich man was left standing there, dumbfounded, and Blackie went up to teach the rich man a lesson, only to find that he still had a handful of handguns, and, deterred by these handguns, the men sat back down, and the last round of the game began in earnest, and the housekeeper, with his handguns, took the whip and walked to the suit man. The steward, Humpty Dumpty, pushes in a bucket of water and gives each man an envelope, the rules of the game being either to hold his breath in the bucket for 2 minutes, or to choose one of the random penalties contained in the envelope. The first to choose is Humpty Dumpty, who, with his lungs failing, can only choose the envelope, and the card in the envelope reveals a small firecracker, and the card in the envelope shows a small popcorn, which, oh, let me get the fire lamps and lanterns on. Fatty was relieved. Instead of a firecracker, the butler gave him a powerful steel cannon, and even feared that he might take it out of his hands. He wrapped a piece of duct tape around Humpty Dumpty's hand, and with a command from Regal, Humpty Dumpty trembled and lit the fuse. The crowd was horrified by the sight, and Humpty Dumpty died of a cardiac attack from the shock, and after dragging away Humpty Dumpty's corpse it was Matt's turn to make a choice, and he did so with an envelope and a card with an eye, and an eye, and an eye. The rich man, with a smile on his face, explained that it was necessary for Matt to cut out his own eye, and that the glasses and the blade were on the floor of the housekeeper's house, and that Matt was completely devastated, with the head of the gun behind his back and his own eye, and that Matt had no choice at that moment. And then it was the turn of Tina, who did not dare to choose the card, and who rose and went to the bucket of water, and that the rich man had set the time and that the housekeeper had pressed the head of the man into the water, and the time was running out, and the man had begun to struggle desperately. But still he could not extricate himself from the steward's hands, and just as he realized that the pot was about to be sharpened, the pressure on his head slackened, and the crowd applauded. They did not expect to see Dina alive, and finally it was the woman's turn to make her choice, knowing that she could not hold her breath for 2 minutes, and so she chose the envelope, the card, which showed a pail of water with a number on it. The number 4 meant that the woman had to hold her breath in the pail, and there were only 2 of us left. The rich man changed the rules of the game and used a coin toss to determine who would start first. Tina was lucky enough to win first prize. The rich man gave her the choice of ending the game and leaving Matt in peace, or killing Matt to take the prize. After seeing Tina's eager and uncertain expression, Matt panicked a little bit, and she tried to continue persuading her, but it was Tina who snapped the banshee and shot her in the heart. The rich man threw back his head and smiled happily, and Mark, who had been defending Tina from the beginning to the end, ended up dying at Tina's hands. With the benefit of her face, the man's sex was truly untested, and so it was that only Tina was the ultimate winner of the Beathist Supper, and your support means the world to me. If you liked this, give it a thumbs up, and subscribe to help this channel grow.